Alright, everybody. The other day we watched Ridley Scott's newest film, Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix. Aiden, what is the plot of Napoleon?
Napoleon is a biopic about the man, the myth, the legend, Napoleon Bonaparte, former emperor of France. Well, the movie looks like it's going to be a grand epic retelling the events of his life and battles and his tactical genius. It's actually Ridley Scott's British coming out and being butthurt at the French again. And the whole movie is just him calling Napoleon a cuck. Which, while a funny meme on 4chan, is not as good when you have to watch it for 3 straight hours. Connor, what'd you think of Napoleon?
I wanted to like Napoleon. I went into it thinking, oh damn, this trailer is good. It's by Apple. You know, the tech conglomerate has been making plays in auteur cinema, which is probably going to come to a close pretty soon when Napoleon and fucking Killers of the Flower Moon have both been flops. But they're trying their hand at auteur cinema like Netflix did before Netflix realized that it doesn't make as good of money, and that, well, I appreciate auteurs getting $200 million to make a movie of their choosing, which in this case didn't really work out, but we'll get to that. That's not really financially viable. Martin Scorsese's entire career has grossed about $1 billion. So giving him an Avengers level budget or giving Ridley Scott an Avengers level budget don't make a lot of sense. Ridley Scott's made substantially more than Martin Scorsese. But the point still stands. You know, you can be a film genius, or in Ridley Scott's case, a demented old man, and still make a flub, or still flop at the box office when Apple gives you way too much money. No amount of marketing is going to make the Marvel people go out and see Killers of the Flower Moon. Unfortunately. But anyways, point is, Napoleon's kind of bad. Joaquin Phoenix is boring as Napoleon. He plays a very reserved character, and we have to spend 3 hours with him. Now, the more reserved character would be fine if everyone else wasn't so political and boring. But our main side character is his wife, former wife at points in the movie, who has several affairs at points. When she's divorced, they still have a relationship built on love, and they love each other, but they're also not. And the movie skips around so much, Ridley Scott kind of forgets in the 3 hours to show any reason these characters should even like each other. Yeah. Like, she was banging dudes, and Joaquin Phoenix was really mad about it. And then Joaquin Phoenix was banging chicks, and she's really upset about it. But then they also love each other. But Joaquin Phoenix, when we see him, is so reserved, and she's so fucking reserved and political and boring, that we never get, like, genuine moments between her and Napoleon. Like, their relationship on paper is very transactional, and what Ridley Scott chooses to show is very transactional. But clearly, because these letters are real, these weird cup letters, we can tell that Napoleon genuinely cares about her, and there's a couple moments towards the end of the film where he shows that, but the damage is already done because I just watched the most boring fucking movie for 3 hours. And the other problem is, you got all these really nicely choreographed, created epic battles, but they start to get boring too and ring really hollow because the only character we know in the battles are Napoleon, and Napoleon's fucking boring and he sucks. So I don't care. Fucking Napoleon could get blown up by a cannonball and I'd be like, alright. And we never actually really hate Napoleon because we're so busy watching him get cucked. You kind of feel bad for him at points. And then you're like, oh, actually this guy's boring and he sucks. And then I don't like feel hatred towards Napoleon. You can make me hate Napoleon. We could see some of his evil deeds. And then maybe when he does his battlefield cunning, you're like, this man is a brilliant genius who's also a crazy, weird psychopath. I think that's what we should feel when watching Napoleon. But instead we're like, this is a very boring man. And he's the only character in any of the scenes we know. And he sucks. The movie is very well shot. There's a lot of really well executed cinematography. There's a lot to be admired about this film. But the problem with film, and here's the thing. I don't think anybody really understands this. People who are really into art house cinema and people who are really into Marvel and that type of shit get so tied up in things like visual spectacle, be that effects or really well shot practical scenes, whatever the case may be. But if your entire attachment to a film is based on spectacle and not characters, which is the core, it ties into video games too. Something like an 8-bit Mario, I think that's a good game because, it's fun. And you play something like Spider-Man, which is top of the line, modern, and it's fun. And that's what makes those good games. And what makes a good movie at its core should be a good story, good pacing, good characters, and then whether the spectacle comes from really good CGI, whether, or if spectacle's even necessary, which it isn't necessary in a lot of movies. But whether the visual spectacle comes from something basic or something more advanced or something cheap or something expensive, at the end of the day, what matters is telling a good story in a film. And if you're not telling a good story, and your character fucking sucks, and your movie's long as fuck, and you don't have a good grasp on how to make this character relatable, or someone you hate, or someone you like. If I have no emotions towards Napoleon because he's fucking boring, then who fucking cares? I don't want to sit there for 3 hours. So yeah, I was fucking bored. At points I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't. I wasn't very tired when I watched the movie. But
I nodded off for like 10 minutes.
You did. You started snoring really loudly, and I was envious of you. More than upset that you were snoring.
I snapped out of it and finished the movie.
You did. You snapped out of it after like 5 minutes, and I felt kind of bad for you. Because I thought maybe if you were really tired and I woke you up, I could be like, come on, buddy, you're too tired to keep watching this movie. We'll finish it another time. And then we would just never get around to finishing it in its theatrical run or ever. Because this movie's fucking boring, and the characters suck. And there's 2 characters in the whole fucking movie that actually matter. And they fucking suck. And it's 3 hours. So yes, it's visually very impressive. From a technical standpoint, Ridley Scott made a marvel of film. And Apple gave him the tools to do it. But come the fuck on, man. This movie was boring. The characters sucked. Whatever. I hated it. I thought it was pretty bad. It's not like an atrocity put to film, but I would never watch it again. Aiden, what did you think of Napoleon?
Napoleon is okay. It has some strong visuals and action, but I think the focus of the movie is put entirely in the wrong place. For a long time, Napoleon's letters to Josephine have been like a meme on 4chan and other places because Napoleon was a gigantic cuck, and it's funny. But Ridley Scott is like a ass-hurt British man who just wanted to make a movie about Napoleon being a cuck, and kind of glossed over all of the actually interesting things that happen. Like, the French Revolution is portrayed in like the first 10 minutes, and it's the best part of the movie, and it's very important to understanding Napoleon's rise, and it's also one of the most interesting events in history. And it's just like 10 minutes where like it's like the last literal 10 minutes of the French Revolution where everyone just gets fucking killed. But then, Napoleon, for all his faults, like being a cuck and a weirdo and other things, was like a tactical genius who was years and years ahead of his time. And the movie does not portray that at all. The movie portrays him as an incompetent, useless cuck, pretty much always. Really, the only 2 battles Napoleon ever lost is only 2 major failures. are both in the movie, even though there's only like 4 battles. But when he tried to invade Russia, the only reason he lost was because Russia's an inhospitable wasteland, and the Russians burned down all their own cities to deny him resources. And then...
Yeah, I mean, Russia pulled that shit twice, they'll pull it again.
The final battle doesn't really explain what's going on, because at the Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon found like a bunch of random traders and farmers who were still willing to follow him. And then he was like, I'm going to go to war with everybody and take back over. And 5 countries had to gang up to take on this guy who was like one guy and like 500 basically pirates. And the movie just glosses over that, and they're like, he was a retard and everyone died. Like, yeah, no shit. Germany, Russia, England, Prussia, and fucking France
Austria.
all teamed up to get rid of him. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, the movie completely glosses over the most interesting things about Napoleon in order for a very butthurt old British man to complain about the French.
Yeah, it's not very
Again.
sterile. It's him complaining a lot. It feels like Ridley Scott complaining more than anything. I agree with you. Because here's my problem.
Napoleon pwned the British like 30 times, and they're still assert about it, so they made a movie about him being a cuck.
Yeah, basically.
Also, it's kind of weird that the movie's in English.
Yeah, that's a little awkward. Also, certain countries will speak their native language, which is very awkward. If they're major characters, like there's the Prince of, I think it's Austria, who Napoleon bangs his sister, his 15-year-old sister or whatever. That guy speaks English.
Yeah,
But
weird.
like, then there's like the Russians don't speak English. This country speaks English, this one doesn't. It's a fucking clusterfuck.
I can understand
Who does
not
and
wanting
who
to
doesn't?
fully commit to the French bit, but I feel like at certain moments you have to pull out the French because the movie is so centrally focused on the lives of a bunch of French people. I don't know.
I feel like commit to it. Like, does the cut of that fucking Prey movie that's all in fucking Comanche, bro.
Yeah,
If a fucking Predator movie is gonna do that,
fair enough.
and I mean, I think they weren't really planning on that shit, and then people were like, they better make this shit in Comanche or it's racist as fuck. These are all white people, so no one cares.
Yeah.
But that was sick, dude. I'm pretty sure. I watched Prey a while ago. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember if I watched it in Comanche or if we got
We
lazy.
watched it in English, but
We did. But I have the 4K, and maybe one day I'll watch it in Comanche. It's cool that they did it.
yeah.
It's cool that I had the
I don't know.
option.
This is a big
Laziness
boy
on
adult
my part.
movie. I feel like they could have gotten away with making it French.
Yes.
I don't know. Like,
I wonder if... I almost feel like that wasn't Apple. I feel like that was fucking Ridley Scott being
that was definitely
lazy.
Ridley Scott. But, I don't know. Like,
That was the corner
I
Ridley
feel like
Scott
there's
chose
so
to
many
cut.
interesting avenues you could explore in a Napoleon movie, and it abandons most of that. Like, I'm not saying you have to completely cut out the fact that Napoleon was a cuck because it's funny, but it's not 3 hours funny. And there's a
No.
lot more. There's a lot more to Napoleon than him just being a cuck, bro.
Here's what you gotta do. Realistically, if you're gonna make a character study on Napoleon, Napoleon is a fierce battlefield leader, and he's a huge dick, and he's very successful at what he does, and he's smart, and he's a genius. But then at home, he's kind of this awkward cuck behind the scenes, and you could actually,
That would
even
work.
if the cuck aspect was the full thing, you got to show more of Napoleon in battle, just being this fierce motherfucker.
Yeah, the contrast would make it funnier, but the fact that
The
he's also
contrast not
portrayed as
only
a
would make
giant
it funnier,
loser on
because
the
it
battlefield
would.
is...
It would, but then maybe you're saying something about power and human insecurities are going to follow through to even the most morbid people or something.
When you have him be that
Humanize
way,
Napoleon.
when you have him be that way at all times, it loses the impact of the comedy of him being a
He's
cuck.
very casual about being a cuck.
Yeah, no,
He's very casual about being a cuck.
it's weird. Yeah. Also, apparently, this movie's like super historically inaccurate. I don't know enough to comment on that. But
Yeah, I don't know anything.
I don't
about
really
this.
care if it's historically inaccurate.
Our
if it-
video's probably historically inaccurate. I don't think Prussia was a thing at this time.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I don't think Prussia was in the battle.
Maybe
I think I'm mixing Prussia and Austria up.
Austria,
so maybe
Prussia.
Austria and Prussia were there. But at one point, Austria and Prussia were one country.
There was 5 countries that all came together to beat on Napoleon when he had a bunch of random pirates, is the point. But yeah, I don't know about the historical inaccuracies. That doesn't bother me, because I'm less autistic than most autistic people. I think it's fine enough to go off the rails a little bit to tell the story you're trying to tell, but this needed to be more interesting to pull that off. So basically,
we're
the movie
3-hour
is just
Pokemon
badly
videos
focused.
and 10-hour DC videos autistic, not Napoleon history, not autistic.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, anyway, yeah, I feel like it should have been focused in completely different areas. Is basically my point. I still think it's okay. Like, I'm not as harsh on it as you, but it's mid for me, maybe slightly below mid. Anyway, Connor, would you recommend Napoleon?
No, I'd skip it. It does feel like Ridley Scott got scammed Apple into giving him $200 million to make a historical epic where 2.5 hours of it is boring, or 2 hours of it's boring, and a half hour of it is cool battles that kind of ring hollow when his interpretation of Napoleon is so biased and boring and has nothing to say. When Godzilla makes characters better than Ridley Scott's art house film, then you know you're in trouble. Aiden, would you recommend Napoleon?
No, I think it's better than you do, but it's just such a weird movie. Like, not weird in a good way or an interesting way. It just kind of feels like... I don't know. You definitely... Someone could make an incredibly enthralling Napoleon movie, and it was apparently not Ridley Scott.
Yes. Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon might have been cool. I mean,
I'm sure it would have been.
He would have leaned into the cuck angle, but made it super interesting. Like, that's the other thing is, like, people are like, some people when this was announced were like, oh, Ridley Scott's kind of gonna finish what Stanley Kubrick never could film because it's too epic. Apple has given old man Ridley Scott the tools to make a movie that Stanley Kubrick was gonna make in his prime, but everyone's like, no, dude, that's too expensive and hard to do. So, Ridley Scott got $1 trillion from Apple, and he made a really butthurt and garbage version. Dude, this movie, imagine what Stanley Kubrick could have done with his 2.5 hours crack at Napoleon. If only.
I mean, Stanley Kubrick would have done something weird, but it probably would have been more interesting.
Yeah, well, actually, like, you look at, like, Barry Lyndon, he could have done the tone. I feel like you mix, like, there would be some weird shit. Like, you look at Paths of Glory, there's some weird shit in that movie.
Yeah.
But Stanley was kicking ass. He was on a fucking roll.
Yeah, I mean, Stanley's version, no doubt, would have been better than this, but...
And I think he would have included the cucking. He would have done less cucking. He would have done tasteful cucking. He would have done more tasteful cucking. Like, the scene where...
Yeah, you don't
Shut
need...
the hell up.
You don't need 30
I'm trying to film a
scenes.
video and these kids are screeching. Anyways, thanks for watching our Napoleon video.
Time for the next one.
Well, you guys have already seen the next one.
Yeah, the next
Or
one's
it's out.
coming out
I don't know if
earlier.
you guys seen it. No one watches these.